We generally start with right heart cath. We just check the pulmonary artery pressure. I've stopped doing a saturation run. You can see we just put a loop in it across the tricuspid valve, and then when we're in the right ventricle, we just pop it up in the pulmonary artery. Nicola, would you like to record PA pressure, phasic and mean there? And we can see the PA pressure is completely normal. So if we were if someone had a dilated right heart or something, then fine. You just wanted to make sure. It's very easy to do saturations, but we're not going to do that. So we're going to go ahead and cross the PFO. So at this point, we would give heparin before we cross it, and we'll.
These are our TOE pictures. This is the left atrium here, right atrium. This is the intraatrial septum, the aortic valve here, so this is anterior. What you can see is quite a prominent eustachian ridge with the Chiari network. And when we're screening for PFOs, the things to warn the operator are of items in the heart that might get in the way, that might interfere with device deployment. So, a very prominent eustachian valve and Chiari network is something that you'll need to be aware of. The septum's mobile, it's not frankly aneurysmal. It's important to make sure that we're just dealing with a PFO. So I'll spin around all the angles with the colour and make sure that I'm not missing an ASD, which obviously will change the whole procedure. So this is it's a PFO with some left to right flow, a long tunnel, quite a prominent eustachian valve with Chiari network is what we're seeing.
To cross the PFO, we use the same multi-purpose catheter, and what we need to do is start at the lower part of the atrial septum and just angle the catheter posteriorly like that, and then just gradually come up the atrial septum, keeping it angled posteriorly. As Neil, I showed you, there's quite a long tunnel here, so the secret is just to wiggle the catheter through the tunnel. That's the tip of it catching in the tunnel just now, I think.
Yeah.
Nilesh might be able to see it. And at this point, the secret is not to kind of push it on, but just to rotate it slightly and try and just wiggle it through, and it finds its own way through. People do use a guide wire sometimes to get up through a PFO. That's us across now.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I've never used a wire to cross a PFO, and I think if you really need to use a wire to get through, it's probably too small to need closing. You can get through a PFO if you use that kind of technique. If there's a reasonable sized PFO, you can get through it with a multi-purpose catheter in every case without the need to poke a wire at the atrial septum. A Terumo wire will go through it don't get me wrong, it'll go through it very, very easily. But I just don't think it's necessary.
So I can see your catheter through this PFO tunnel here. I'll stick the colour on. What I look at is if there's a PFO flap or tunnel, then even if there's some flow across it through that tunnel, I will call that a PFO. Now once you're not really dealing with a tunnel, but you're dealing with the intraatrial septum that comes flush with a hole, then I'll call that an ASD. I think it's an important distinction because, as I've said before, you can have a PFO flap and adjacent to it you can have an ASD.
Yeah, but they're really quite different. So yeah, I totally agree. This is definitely a PFO, even though there's a little left to right shunt. So we've coined a term for these PFOs that have a little left to right shunt. Would you like to know what it is?
Yeah, please.
It's called an incompetent PFO.
Okay.
What do you think?
I like it.
Right. So this is an 8 French delivery sheath, which we can just flush. So we just flush both parts and pass it to Richard to make the catheter exchange. It has a 45-degree bend on the tip. It looks a bit more than that, but once we've got the dilator in, it's about a 45-degree bend at the tip. And we'll use this to deliver the PFO occluder device. We're going to take a 25 millimeter Platzer occluder device. And I'll show you how to get the occluder device ready in a second. So the important thing with this is really to make sure everything's really well flushed. And you can, if you're not careful, get air embolism. We want to make sure the device and all the catheter and equipment is really well flushed, and that we don't have any air in the system. One of the first things to check is that all of these joins are secure. They don't come out of here necessarily secure, so there's kind of three joins in the system. We make sure they're all secure, and then flush the system, and then we'll pass the delivery cable through here, so that's ready to go. And Pam has a 25mm occluder device. Thank you. Which we'll put straight into some heparinized saline and give it a good wash. The device screws onto the cable. It's hard to do it left-handed, since I'm very right-handed. But we screw it on. I do it over the water just in case I drop it, because this is quite expensive. So you can screw it on as tight as you like, and then you loosen it before you pull it back into the delivery sheath. So you just loosen it by quarter an eighth of a turn or so. You can feel it click as you do so, and then it's ready to go. So then, under the saline, I'll get you to do some flushing, Lisa. So we can just flush gently as we pull this back. Get the bubbles out before we do so, and then pull back. Okay. So from this point on, we never aspirate, and just be careful that we never inject any more bubbles at any point. You can put your finger over the top, make sure that it's coming back. And then what I also do is just bring the device out under the saline again, just to make sure there are no bubbles trapped within. And we've actually got one or two little bubbles. Okay, and then one last flush, Lisa, if you do an exchange. We'll pull it back when you're giving a good... Okay. And we'll pull it back as we're flushing. Make sure that's good and tight. Okay, and I think we're ready to go, yeah?
This is a right atrial view, and we can see beautifully the PFO flap, and then tilting it to show the catheter into the left atrium there. Beautiful. That's amazing, Ken.
And now we see it coming up into the left atrium. So the device is well across in the left atrium. I can start pulling the delivery sheath back and just to deploy the device in the upper part of the left atrium. So from now on, we're going to rely a lot more on the echo than screening. We'll just screen occasionally, but we'll see the device nicely on the echo in a second. As we pull it back, you see the device coming up towards the atrial septum. It's beautifully seen in both the 2D and the 3D shots there. And no, it's okay. We can stop flushing now. So this is an asymmetric device, as you saw. That's the smaller of the two discs that you see in the left atrium. It has an 18mm diameter disc. And we've got it nicely opposed to the atrial septum. I'm just putting a little bit of tension on it there to keep it opposed to the atrial septum. And we can go ahead and deploy the right atrial disc and the device. And by pushing the cable forward a little bit, we've taken kind of putting a bit of slack in the system, so the device is now able to conform along the septum. You can see that the discs are looking flat, and it's nicely conformed to the septum, and that'll improve when we eventually release it. I think what little tension there is in the system on the cable is distorting it slightly. It'll sit flat against the septum when we release it. So I think that looks very nice. We'll see what Nilesh thinks, and I specifically want to have a close look at the aorta in this case, because I think this PFO is quite close to the aortic root, which it often is, and we just like to be reassured that the device isn't touching any part of the aortic root. And Nilesh should also have a look at that eustachian valve that was very prominent. Over to you.
So it's beautifully seated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin through all the angles and check all the rims of this device really.
It's close to the aortic root then, Nilesh, but
Yeah,
I don't think
it
it's
is, yeah.
touching it.
I'm just going to check to make sure it hasn't affected valve function. So the aortic valve's fine.
So if Nilesh is happy, I'll do a stability test, and if you can get a nice picture of the device, Nilesh, that's great. What we'll do is give it a little pull, and you can see us stretching the RA disc off the septum. It looks very secure, and we can give it a little push, and again, it all looks very secure. So if you're happy, Nilesh, I'll release it there.
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
I'm sure he's right that you'll see when we release the cable here, the device will move. There it goes. Okay, we just pull this sheath out and press on it for a few minutes.
So that's the left atrial side and the right atrial side. Looks great, yeah.